Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Paper Crafting Saturday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Thank you for joining me. I'm inspired today by the changing of the leaves. They're still green, but they have a little tinge of what's to come with autumn, and I love this time of year. I love the fall colors. That palette really appeals to me. But we still have some flowers blooming. In fact, I've got roses blooming in my garden. And they're called the crocus rose, and they're just beautiful. I should have brought one in to show you. I will post a picture after the video. And so they've inspired me to do a kind of a fall rose floral card, which I think is going to be really pretty because I'm going to be using some of my favorite colors, and I'm going to be doing a little stamping, a little ink painting, some die cuts, and just a little bit of everything. So I think you'll enjoy this card. The stamp set I'm using is All Things Fabulous, and it has these beautiful 3-step rose images, and it also comes with some really nice dies. And I like the way this rose looks, but rather than just using the stamped image alone, I'm going to enhance it with a little bit of watercolor technique. So I think this is something that the stampers and the watercolor painters out there will really enjoy. And then I'm also going to do some die cutting. So the inks I have are these 5. Okay, this is the palette that I'm using. It's crushed curry, cinnamon cider, rich raspberry, blackberry bliss, and old olive. I've got out a water painter, which is one of the watercolor brushes that has the water in the handle. I've got a couple of containers of water handy and some paper towels. And I've already gone ahead and I've got my card and some various papers ready to go so that the video won't take too long. And I'm going to be using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. And so for this, I'm just going to use a small piece. So let's see what I've got in here. All right, these are the same. So I'm just grabbing I think it's a half piece of the Fluid 1 watercolor paper. And I'm going to get my stamp pad out for this because these are photopolymer stamps. So I'm going to use my pad. This is the foam piercing mat that's just covered up with a piece of scrap paper. And that's going to help give me a little bit of cushioning. Now these stamps actually have instructions with them if you look very closely. So on the inside of the box, you'll notice that each of these stamps have a little arrow. They've got a number and an arrow, and that's to indicate the top so that when you line the stamps up, they coordinate with one another. Now, you don't have to do it perfectly. Don't worry. It's going to be fine even if you're a little bit off. So don't let that keep you from playing with these stamps because they're really fun. So I'm going to start with my crushed curry. Actually, let me zoom you in here so that you can see better. There we go. It just fits. Maybe if I do it sideways, you can see a little better. All right, so here is my crushed curry rose. And I'm just going to let that ink transfer a minute to the watercolor paper. So I'm just holding it for a moment. So there's my image, and I know it looks a little bit blotchy right now, but don't worry about that. Now I'm going in with my second stamp that coordinates with the first stamp, and I'm going to add more ink right over the image, like so. Okay, so you can start to see some dimension beginning to happen. Now I'm taking a darker ink. I'm using the cinnamon cider for this. And I'm grabbing the smallest of the three stamps, and I'm going to just line that up. My head's getting in the camera, sorry. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to switch flowers. And this time I'm taking the more forward-facing rose, and I'm using the rich raspberry ink. And I'm going to stamp off once, because this is a very dark color, and then give that a stamp. Again, taking my second stamp, this time full strength, just getting that lined up. And now I have to move this stamp for a second. So I'm just putting the tiniest stamp on my block. And this time I'm going to switch to the Blackberry Bliss. Now the Fluid 100 watercolor paper has a degree of texture to it. So you may be thinking to yourself, oh, well, that image didn't come out so well, but that's okay, because we're going to be applying some water over the top of it to smooth it out. So I'm using my water painter here, and I'm just going to paint around the edges, and I'm just going to soften and extend that area. And you can see how the addition of water really changes that color. Okay, so I'm going way outside the lines here. And the reason for that is I don't want there to be any white edges when I cut these out. So there's my crushed curry, and now here's the rich raspberry. I'm just adding water all around. Maybe that's a little too much water. I'm just going to mop up some of that extra. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so I'm just continuing to soften those edges. All right, so I'm going to put this aside to dry. And while that's drying, I've got another piece of the watercolor paper. If I could find it. Here we go. All right, so here's a piece of the Fluid 100, and this piece measures 3 3/4 by 5. And I want to put a light wash in the background. And so again, I'm going to, I'll start with my crushed curry and just very lightly add a little bit of color, very faint, here and there, right to the edges. And I just want this to be a kind of a impression of autumn in the background. I'm going to add a little bit of my old olive green for the foliage. And my rich raspberry. Okay, and now for a little added dimension, I'm going to drop in some of the darker colors. So I'm going to go to my cinnamon cider and just put a couple of daubs here and there. There we go. And then the same with my Blackberry Bliss. And making sure that this is diluted well down because it's such a powerful color. So I'm using plenty of water with this one and just using a tiny bit. There we go. And then finally, I'm going to add a little bit more of the old olive and just indicate some sort of leaf shapes. Soften those a little bit. There we go. All right, so that's my background impression, and I want to do one more thing, and that is I'm going to take my cinnamon cider. And I'm going to grab a sponge, and I'm just going to go around the edges. Now it's still very damp, so I may have to do this again after it has a minute to dry a little bit. But what I want this to do is I just want it to bleed into the damp areas and help to soften the edges. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to put this aside to dry as well. Let me do a little cleanup here. Got a lot of moving pieces on my desk right now. All right. Now, if you are not on my mailing list, I'd like to invite you to go ahead to Dandelion Cottage Design and sign up for my newsletter Notes, because I'm going to be sending out announcements very shortly on my upcoming design journal workshop, and the invitation will have answers to all your questions. A lot of people have been contacting me and asking me about materials and whether demos can take the workshop or if it's just for customers and all that sort of thing. And yes, everybody and anyone is welcome to join us. There are several different tiers of joining the workshop, and all of that will be explained in the invitation. So please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Design. Dandelion Cottage Design, and I will also post that link below after I do the video. Also, I'll be posting the materials list of all of the products that you see me using here today from my online store, in case you'd like to follow along and do something like this. All right, so I'm going to go back now. Here are those first flowers that I painted. And I'm getting out my cut and emboss machine. And I'm going to get the dies out that correspond to these flowers. Let me just make sure that I'm in frame here so you can see what I'm doing. So here's my first flower. This is the one that sort of faces upwards. And this is the sort of forward-facing flower, and I think I have that upside down. Let me see. No, that's right. Okay, here we go. Making sure I have that just where I want it. All right, and now I'm going to run this through the machine twice, and the reason I'm going twice is because the Fluid 100 watercolor paper is very heavy. It's I believe it's 140-pound paper, so you want to make sure that you get it cut through all the way. So there we go. Okay, so now I'll give you a close-up. I think you can see how nicely these came out, and they do not have that white edge. I wanted to make sure that the color extended well beyond the edges. You can see that here. Okay, we can line them up so you can even see how that comes out. So I think you get a sense, all right? And by adding that little bit of a wash around the edges, we were able to get a very nice die cut here. Now I'm just checking to see if anybody has any questions before I continue. It comes out. Hi Kelly, hi Linda. Lawana, we haven't seen you for a little while. Thank you all so much for joining me. Nice to see you here today. I hope you have a really nice weekend. All right, so now I'm going to do some assembly. So let me get out all my pieces and show you what I have ready for you. There we go. Okay, so here are my die cuts. I've got a piece of the DSP. This is the gilded paper, and this is from the Blackberry Bliss Suite, and I just love this paper, and it's the colors that are in these papers and the suite that really inspired the colors for the card today. I've got a mat here. This is the cinnamon cider. It measures 4 by 5 1/4. This paper also measures 4 by 5 1/4. I've got a couple of other die cuts that I did earlier, which may or may not be used. And then I've also gone ahead and I've die cut some of the leaves from the Fabulous Floral Suite in the gold foil to give it a little extra sparkle and to tie in with this wonderful paper. And you also get this fantastic, and I'll give you a close-up of this because it's really extremely intricate. This is also one of the dies that comes with this set. And really this is the thing that made me want to get the whole thing, because I plan on using these die cuts quite a bit in my journals and upcoming classes. So I think that covers just about everything. Oh, I have another piece of the Very Vanilla. This is the standard weight. Oops. And this one measures 3 by 4, and that's for the inside of the card. So the first thing I want to do is take my background, and I'm going to mount that on my cinnamon cider mat. And I'm going to try to find a glue that's not empty. It's still damp, but it's dry enough that I can handle it. And I'm just going to burnish that well. Make sure that the glue adheres into all of that texture that's on this watercolor paper. There we go. And I thought what I would do would be to add my elements something like this. Okay. And then so it's going to look something like this, but I want to add some of that gold ribbon. So let me see if I can. But actually, let me think. Do I want the ribbon or the thread? I think I want the thread. It's a little more delicate. So before I start adding all these pieces, I want to wrap my card a couple of times with the thread, and I'm just going to tie that in a knot to hold that in place. And I'm going to separate that. Okay. And now I can put this on my card base. The card base is also very vanilla thick. Oops, went off the edge there. Get that lined up. It looks pretty good. I can see my my card's not folded very straight, so I'll fix that in just a minute. And just get this on first. I'm just gonna refold. That's better. Okay, there we go. I don't know what I'd do without my bone folder. All right. So there's my base. Now this beautiful filigree has these kind of central areas that are thick enough that I can put a nice daub of glue in the center of each one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to dot around in some of these other intersections where I have another opportunity to add a little more glue. Okay, and get my string out of the way. I'm just going to tuck that under a little bit. Oops, stuck to my finger. Get that on there straight. Just using a tissue in case there's any glue, but I think we're fine. And let's see, I'm going to need some dimensionals. Okay, there's one. And I'm just going to pop up two of the flowers onto dimensionals. All right, and then these other two I'm going to adhere directly onto the card. And put this one down here. Just going to hold that in place so that it's straddling the gold thread. And this one I think I'll have facing down, and I'll let that extend a little bit past the border. This one I'll put up above. And I'll put this one right here. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to these gold leaves. Slip that under, and I'm also going to let that extend past the border a little bit just to break up that edge. And then this one can go under here, like so. Okay. And I don't know, we'll see how a bow looks. I'm not sure if I want it to be just a knot or a bow. I guess a bow's okay. I don't know, what does everybody think? Knot or bow? I'll let the audience decide if the gold thread should be knotted or tied into a bow. Now I have some decoration for the interior of the card as well. So let's just open that up. This is this absolutely glorious DSP, and I'll tell you what, it's so beautiful that it's almost a shame to have it compete with anything else. It's just gorgeous on its own. And I'm going to make sure that I've got plenty of this because I'm really looking forward to making boxes with it too. I think it'll be really spectacular to use with box making. So I'm just getting that centered in my card. Make sure that's straight. Looks pretty good. And give that a burnish. And then I've got my piece of Very Vanilla for my note. And I'm going to mount that so it's a little bit high, give it some weight at the bottom, and that way I can provide an opportunity to see a little bit more of this beautiful pattern. All right, so there's my inside. Can you see that? Oh, look how pretty that is. Love it. All right, now let's see what the vote is for the thread. Bow, bow, bow. Okay, so bow it is. Thank you. And last but not least, I have these wonderful gems that I've been using like crazy. Again, what are these called? The Brushed Metallic Adhesive Back Dots. And I'm going to use a couple of gold ones. So I'm just lifting up. I'll take a big one, put it in this corner, and I'll add a couple of little ones like so. And that, my friends, is the card for today, inspired by the beautiful autumn roses. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to pick one just so that you can see it, the crocus rose. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a terrific weekend. I hope you're enjoying all the nature around you. If you haven't subscribed to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, please do. I will provide a link below to subscribe, and you can also visit my website at dandelioncottagedesign.com and get more information and subscribe to Notes there as well. So I'll see you next on Monday for Marvelous Monday. Stay well, stay happy, and stay creative, and I will see you next time.